Josh Pate picked Oregon to make the national championship game. If he's right, there are at least these three things that have to happen.
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, it is that time once again for Locked On Ducks. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view of the day. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day and your number one source to stay up to date with the Ducks. Shout out to my everydayers out there. Jam-packed Monday show. It's game week. 5 days from when this show airs, we have an Oregon football game. I can't wait. And to talk about whether the Big Ten will just keep dominating the national championship picture, Episode 3 reaction to Under Construction, of course. And you know Oregon trivia is out there because why wouldn't it be? This episode brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Football season is around the corner. It's already started, actually. Visit the FanDuel app today. Start planning your futures bets now. So, Josh Pate, who I had on my Locked On College Football show earlier this year, I don't agree with everything that he says because there is no pundit in the world who you can agree with 100% of the time, except for, of course, yourself. And even then, you never know. You never know. I agree with 100% of the things that I say, of course. But he put out a season prediction, and he picked Oregon to go to the national title game and lose to Alabama. Now, I got to... Let's get to the storyline of that, because those of you who follow the college football coaching carousel closely know why that would be familiar, but better somehow. Maybe. Let's get back to that. Three things that if Oregon's getting all the way to the national championship game, I'm not predicting them to go there. I think this team makes the playoff, wins a game or two, and then we'll see what the matchups look like. Maybe they get a great matchup, somebody pulls an upset, it benefits them, and they go to the national title game. I can see it. I can definitely see it. I've got a lot of faith in Dan Lanning. I've got a lot of faith in the talent on this roster, only to an extent for this year. But can I see it? Yes. That would be, to me, like upward potential. I mean, college football is wide open. So, yeah, Oregon can win the national championship this year. But the three things that have got to take place, let's start with Dante Moore. Dante Moore can't be good. He can't be okay. He can't be up and down. If Oregon's winning the national championship this year, or getting to the game rather, Dante Moore has to be elite right away. He has to step in, and you have to feel like there is almost no drop-off from Dillon Gabriel a season ago. You've got to be at that level. Dillon Gabriel was not as good as Bo Nix. The numbers back that up. But Dillon Gabriel was still really good. So Dante Moore this year would have to go out and be able to play like a veteran. And I don't think statistically, Gabriel finished third in the Heisman voting last year for a reason. His numbers weren't that gaudy. What he did so well last year, and where his veteran presence really benefited that Oregon team, situationally, the dude was dynamite. That Ohio State game, he was awesome. The numbers were really good in that game, but in a couple of key moments, when it felt like the game could get away, he had a couple of big throws. When there was a big third down, he makes the perfect read, runs for the go-ahead touchdown. When Oregon needed a drive, Dillon Gabriel hit a couple of big throws. So that's where I think Dante Moore would have to be better than where I expect him to be this year in his first full season starting with the Ducks. He would have to be elite. Now, Oregon made a national championship game, of course, and lost in 2010 with Darren Thomas at quarterback. And Thomas that year completed only 61.5% of his passes. That it was a bit of a different era back then. Quarterbacks have generally been more efficient. I think Dante Moore will be above that number now. He was also only 2,800 yards, 30 touchdowns, and 9 interceptions. Frankly, more picks than I thought Darren Thomas, or than I remembered him throwing in that particular year. But if Dante Moore has that type of season, and I think in today's world where there are a lot more passing stats because offenses have innovated so much, Dante Moore would probably be right around where I've predicted him in the low 3,000s for passing yards, but he's got to keep the interceptions down. He had 9 interceptions during his time at UCLA to 11 touchdowns. That's not a ratio that is going to work, but he's got to be able to step up in every single big moment except for one. Because here's the great thing. Here's the optimistic Captain Optimism briefly returning here to the show before Spencer's back hosting again. Oregon does not have to beat Penn State. They don't have to be firing on all cylinders and play the best game of their lives to win the national championship or make the national championship game. That is not something that has to happen. It's kind of refreshing, isn't it? Do I think that's great for college football? No, but hey, that's the world we got. So that's where you'd have to start. Dante Moore has to be elite. I don't think he has to have a Bo Nix Heisman finalist type season. I don't think he has to set an Oregon passing yardage record. But situationally, he'd have to be unbelievably good for a guy starting his first full season. Second thing, and this would, of course, help him a lot, the offensive line's got to click right away. Now, by the end of the season, we may very well see that. But in two ways, this has got to be good. The only ways you can think about an offensive line. They have to be able to protect Dante Moore. They have to be better running the ball. That was something I talked about at the time and have discussed since. That Ohio State game went so poorly in the Rose Bowl for a number of reasons. One of them, Oregon couldn't run the ball. And when you become one-dimensional, a great defensive coordinator with a great defense is going to stifle you no matter who is playing at quarterback. So the offensive line this year has got to click. I don't think they have to click right away, but they certainly have to maximize the talent that they've got up front, which is a lot. And again, if they go to Penn State and struggle, hey, that could be a learning opportunity. They get better as the season goes on, play their best ball at the end. Thirdly, and again, all three of these things would have to happen. There can be no negotiation. There can be no excuse. If one of these things is off, I don't think Oregon can make the national championship game. The secondary has to be better this year than it was in 2024. Now, it is a new unit. There is a lot of talent. There is not as much experience outside of Dylan Thieneman. Maybe Theron Johnson ends up starting, Northwestern transfer. But that unit has to be better. You cannot have a group, whether it's the corners, the safeties, everybody together, whatever. You can't have a group that can be exploited the way Oregon safeties were a season ago. You're going to run into somebody, maybe not in Big Ten play. I mean, maybe Washington could do it. That's one of the better passing attacks Oregon will see this season. Penn State's could be okay. You'll run into somebody in the playoff. Maybe it's Ohio State again. Maybe it's Georgia whose passing attack can be improved. You can't have a weakness like that can be exploited by a really, really great team. Doesn't mean they're going to get burned, if they aren't good enough to be at that level. Doesn't mean they're going to get burned by the teams that Oregon's much better than on their schedule. But if you're talking about making the national championship game, that unit has to be better. And by the end of the season, who knows? Maybe they will be. So if any of those three things don't happen, I don't think Oregon gets there. Now, the interesting thing about this pick that Josh Pate made, let me know your thoughts on that in the comments below, or hit me up on Twitter, by the way. The interesting thing is he has Oregon losing to Alabama, whose head coach is Kalen DeBoer. I'd almost rather miss the playoff than another 3-point heartbreaking loss in that situation, man. I hope that wouldn't be ultimate revenge for Dan Lanning, though. The ultimate sign of growth as a head coach. Boy, that would be something. But Mason sent this question: what's a better storyline for a natty against Kalen DeBoer or going against his former head coach, Kirby Smart? I'm in the camp Bama would make a better story, but only by a little. The better story, it's kind of a coin flip, but frankly, I'd go with the DeBoer angle as well, because those are the iconically bad moments, along with 2022 Oregon State, of Dan Lanning's career. If he were to just exercise all of those demons in one game and it's Oregon's breakthrough national championship, I think that'd be slightly better than going up against his old mentor and Kirby Smart and beating him. But that's something that would be fascinating to watch as well, because typically it takes a while for former assistants to beat their former head coach. And of course, Lanning lost to Kirby Smart in his first game as a head coach back in 2022. So I would love for Oregon to make the national championship game this year, but Dante Moore has to be elite, especially in situational spots. The offensive line has got to click, maybe not right away, but by the end of the year, and the secondary has got to be able to perform better in the biggest games against the best teams than they did a season ago. If there's anything you think I missed, drop it in the comments below for how Oregon makes the national title game, which I do think is possible. It's one of the reasons I'm excited for the year. I just don't expect it as much as I did a year ago. Those two things, very, very different. Is the Big Ten just going to roll through and keep winning national championships, Oregon fits into that fold. First, this episode brought to you by Rugia. Guys, you've probably heard of Viagra or Cialis. Maybe you've even tried them. But if you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rugia Ready. Rugia Ready is a next-gen prescription treatment designed to amplify arousal in the brain and boost blood flow. Unlike the usual pills that can take hours, Rugia's 3-in-1 formula dissolves under your tongue and kicks in fast. On average, in 15 minutes. Effects can last up to 36 hours, so you can stay confident and in control when the moment is right. If traditional options haven't worked for you, Rugia might be the answer. Over 150,000 men have already made the switch. Head to Rugia.com/LockedOnCollege and use code LockedOnCollege to get 15% off today. That's RUGIET.com/LockedOnCollege. Use the promo code LockedOnCollege for 15% off. Individual results may vary with prescription treatment. Compounded drugs are permitted to be prescribed under federal law, but are not FDA approved and do not undergo FDA safety, effectiveness, or manufacturing review. Please visit the Rugia website for full safety information. Check them out at Rugia.com/LockedOnCollege. I had that jug from golf earlier for my second segment sip because it's very hot in southern Utah in St. George this time of year. And guess what? You got to stay hydrated out there. So, drip drop's a great way to do that too. Rear Deck sends in this take for Spencer's scale of agreement. The Big Ten Conference will make it 4 national championships in a row, with Penn State winning in 2025 and Oregon winning in 2026. I would love for this to happen so very much. I'm in on Penn State this year over on Locked On College Football. I think they are very good because they are. It's a team that was one drive from the national title game a year ago. Most of that team is back. They hired Jim Knowles from Ohio State, who we as Oregon fans know is a great defensive coordinator, and they've got a lot going for them there. Oregon winning in 2026. I mean, is picking national title winners is difficult. It would be something if the Big Ten rattled off 4 in a row. I don't even know the last time the SEC won 4 in a row, because it would have been 19 to 22. Okay, well, that didn't take very long, but that would have been the last time, because LSU won it in 2019, Bama 21, Georgia 21-22. So that'd be the last time. If you went Michigan, Ohio State, Penn, when was the last time they did with 4 different teams? I don't know that has ever happened, at least in the modern era of college football. So that'd be pretty unprecedented. But look, I think Penn State this year is a legitimate national title contender. I put Oregon in that mix, but I have them a notch below for experience reasons. And Jim Knowles is DC, man. He's really, really good. Like, Penn State just got all the tools this year. We'll see if James Franklin can get over the big game hump, but people have the same criticisms of Jim Harbaugh for a while. And if you'll remember, going into last year, a question I used to get frequently going into the year, is Dan Lanning going to win the big game? Can Dan Lanning win the big game? Does Dan Lanning need to win the big game? And based on the first 2 years of Dan Lanning coaching, I thought, well, first of all, there have been some big games. And second of all, I don't doubt that he's going to be able to break through in one of those moments. And yeah, the Rose Bowl was ugly, but October 12th, I think it was one of the biggest days in the history of Oregon football. Quite literally. So, and by the way, that was a Dan Lanning coaching masterclass with the 12 men on the field, and he forced the rule change and all that. Like, I don't think he had that in his bag in year one. One of the reasons that even though Oregon has a young team this year, and, like one ESPN commentator, I forget who it was, ESPN or The Athletic, I talked about it a while ago on the show, picked Oregon to be the unranked team at the end of the season who's ranked in the top 10 this year, meaning they'd probably go 8-4 or 7-5. I understand why you'd come to that conclusion. I think that's underselling Dan Lanning a little bit as a head coach. But anyway, getting back to the question here from Rear Duck. Penn State this year, Oregon next year. It's not the most likely thing. Those are going to be 2 top 5 national title odds teams in the next couple of seasons. Penn State, I think, is, let's see what FanDuel's got them at for national championship. They wouldn't be outside the top 3. They'd probably be number 2 behind Clemson for me. personally. So national championship, Texas, Georgia, Ohio State, Penn State, Alabama are the top 5. Oregon is there at number 8. Next year, I fully expect Oregon to be inside the top 5 going into the year. So, a couple of top 5 teams. I can't put this any lower than a 4.5, frankly. I don't think I'll put it at a 5 just because, to say it's just as likely to happen as not happen when you're talking national championships, that's a pretty bold statement there. And picking national title winners and Heisman winners is usually what I describe as a sucker's bet. But yeah, Penn State, great shot to do it this year. They will not have the same chance next season. Oregon, good shot this year. I think Oregon will have a great shot next year, presuming Dante Moore comes back and they can figure out what's going on along next year's offensive line. Because, of course, they have 4 newcomers this year, and they're going to lose some of those guys this year. So, or most of them, I think. Anyway, cross that bridge when we come to it. Off-season conversation. BookDuck23AZ says, how much do you think the eventual departures of certain coordinators, timely question, will affect the retention of blue-chip talent we've recruited over the years? Well, very little is the short answer that I'll give you there. But, last week I talked about both coordinators and the likelihood that they could depart. Will Stein leaving is far more likely than Tosh Lupoi. I think we understand that. I don't think there are places, despite his recruiting prowess, that are lining up to try and hire Tosh away to be the DC somewhere else. And also, when was the last time a coordinator left Oregon for a lateral move? It's not the sort of play, it's one of the probably 5 best jobs, 10 best jobs in all of college football. Which place are you leaving for? There would have to be a falling out. Jim Knowles at Ohio State, going from Ohio State to Penn State, that's a lateral move, maybe even an ever so slight of a downgrade. That happened, I heard, because there was some internal strife between Ryan Day and Jim Knowles. And I don't know that for 100% to be certain, but why else would you leave a team you just won a national championship with? It seems a little strange. To go to a contender that's odd. But I don't think that that's likely to happen. Dan and Tosh have seemed very tight. I've never heard of anything happening between those two. So is there going to be a blow up there? No. Would Will Stein leave Oregon to go be LSU's offensive coordinator? I don't think so. Would he go to be Texas's offensive coordinator? Maybe. But no, he wouldn't go to Texas specifically. Steve Sarkisian's the play caller. He's not going to give that up. So, yeah, I don't think there are any lateral places where you lose a coordinator. But for a head coaching position, yeah, absolutely. Stanford's going to be looking for a full-time head coach. Maybe a job or two in the state of Texas comes up. Watch for Will Stein's name to get thrown around out there. If a Big Ten job, if the Maryland job comes open, maybe they try and hire Will Stein. He's got experience in the Big Ten. And also they're trying to commit to football financially in a big way. It's on the other side of the country, but hey, Will Stein came from the state of Texas. He's at Oregon now. Maryland's, I think, roughly equidistant there. So back to the question, will it affect Oregon's ability to retain all the talent they have on the roster this year and in the coming years? Not significantly. You could see it for a couple of players. Oregon is not a place that you're going to see a mass exodus from if a coordinator, Will Stein, gets hired to be a head coach. So take, for instance, Curt Cignetti. Went to Indiana last year. He brought with him 20, 30 guys or whatever it was from James Madison, the place where he'd been before winning football games. And they, of course, had a lot of success. Up at Washington State, our old Pac-12 foe, RIP, you've got the same thing. Jimmy Rogers left South Dakota State, brings a bunch of guys with him up to Pullman this year. Will Stein is not going to pull a bunch of guys away from Oregon. When Kiffin and Sark left Alabama over the years, or what's another good example? When Kirby Smart left, they might have brought a couple of players with them, but when you're making a lateral or a downgrade of a move, which guys, there could be a couple that are more buried on the depth chart, but which guys offensively, Austin Novosad is the name that comes to mind. If Will Stein were to take the Maryland job one day, which guys would go with him? Because that's a better place for them to be, and they want to be with Will Stein. Novosad, sure, because he'd be the starting quarterback. But who else? There might be a couple guys, But no, I don't think Oregon, Lanning is often citing and very proud, and he should be, of the fact that they've never lost a starter to the portal. They've lost some guys over the last couple of seasons. That's to be expected. That's going to happen everywhere you look. But no, I don't think you're ever going to see a play. I just think Oregon has, going back to the Big Ten conversation I was just having with the first question in this segment, Oregon's in the Big Ten, and as a program and as a brand, they've ascended to the point where you're not going to see, players leave in mass unless the head coach leaves as well. That's the only situation where that could occur. So coordinators, no, I do not think so. Good question though. Under Construction episode 3. I loved it. First, this episode brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. August 26th is officially FanDuel Futures Day, a brand new holiday for football fans who live for bold predictions and preseason hunches, like what I was talking about earlier. If you think Oregon's making the national championship game, winning the Big Ten, winning the national championship, those sorts of futures bets are available over at FanDuel. For just 24 hours, FanDuel's giving you deals on NFL season predictions. So whether you're calling your MVP, eyeing a long shot division winner, or ready to crown your Super Bowl champ before week 1 even kicks off, this is your moment. And as I mentioned, college football is plentiful over at FanDuel. You have got win totals. Oregon's is 10.5. You have got national title odds, conference title odds, Heisman odds, can all be had over there at FanDuel. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bets now, because Futures Day, August 26th, is one day and one day only. FanDuel, play your game. Frankly, to the tease I had earlier in the segment, who doesn't love Under Construction? It's just awesome. It's fun to see. It's a great tease for the season. It's great to see behind the scenes stuff. It's an awesome way for fans to learn more about players and coaches and the team. And I mean, the number of people behind the scenes, this episode started with Trey McNutt and his rehab and the trainer that he's working with. And, as someone who does play-by-play for a football team at Southern Utah, and all the other sports as well, like, I see all the people that go into, putting a game onto a field or onto a court. Most people don't see or think about or appreciate that. And I think it's awesome that they get that sort of recognition, and that, people can just get a peek behind the curtain and go, oh, that's how they do it. Oh, that's what that looks like. Oh, wow, that's cool. And it's awesome. And also, we have football this week. I can't wait for that. So, a few key takeaways, like starting with Trey McNutt. Apparently he broke his leg diving to break up a pass, and it was in practice. And this is a small thing I noted, but he was saying, yeah, it sucks getting hurt, but I broke up the pass. He didn't catch it. I was laughing like, man, the start of your college career is going to be on the IL because of a play in practice. And I love that the mentality is, hey, he didn't catch it though. Like, no plays off. It's like Michael Jordan in The Last Dance throwing the quarters at the wall. Like, that's what it reminded me of. A couple of other things that stood out. Dante Moore had an over-the-shoulder pass to Jeremiah McLaughlin. Oh my gosh. The excitement level that swells within me when I watch that and realize we don't have to be theoretical about what Dante Moore can be. And, well, I shouldn't say that entirely, because I don't think he's hitting his ceiling in year 1, because almost zero quarterbacks do. But we are going to see some real football that counts, and I can't wait. I am excited. Every time I see those sorts of snippets, the throw to Malik Benson down the field in one of them, or the corner throw to Sadiq when he's rolling left, like it's awesome. Awesome stuff. Rashad Samples at one point. There were a lot of coaches talking in this segment, and I love hearing that sort of stuff. Not just Dan Lanning or the coordinators, but the position coaches or special assistants. And again, that makes me feel the same thing I was talking about earlier, where like there's so many people that go into making a football game happen. So much. And so Rashad Samples had something that I thought was great when, I think it was a clip when they were at the retreat in Sun River, and he was talking about, coaching the guys and getting them to not do stuff. And the staff started engaging in a conversation about something that I actually talk about with my brother or my friends or whoever on the golf course, because I help coach them all the time. And this is a great thing to internalize for golf, football, anything, especially golf, though. I can tell you from experience. If you're trying to correct a problem, think about what you're going to do. Don't say what not to do. So if you're trying to not get your arms away from your body on a golf swing, you don't want to say, don't get your arms away. Don't get your arms. You want to say, okay, what am I going to do? I'm going to pull my hands in. I'm going to maintain lag through impact. I'm going to do those things. Being more positive and affirmative with it is a great thing to teach people. So I love that. The growth moments where they were talking about, Luke Moga making a better read, Elijah Rushing getting better against the ground game, Jeremiah McLaughlin and, a ball that he hauls in down the sideline that last year he didn't. When Lanning was at the board, Kenyon Sadiq and blocking, like those little moments. Don't show them to Husky fans; they'll get really upset. Those little moments I thought were great. Lanning shouted out Jeremiah McLaughlin for having a great fall. He had that over-the-shoulder catch earlier. Maybe that's a sign of things to come. We'll see. And, talking about Ife Obadegwu, for someone that's waiting for his moment, working while he waits, I think is a great mantra. And, Dan Lanning mentioned Blake Purchase as well, having a great spring. I'm so excited to watch these guys, man. On the one hand, yes, it is a reservation I have that this is a team that is young, talented, but not super experienced yet. But gosh, it makes me excited because I don't know what to expect. Like I kind of knew what Dylan Gabriel was going to be last year, and he was that guy, which was great. I don't really know what Dante Moore is going to be. I don't know what Elijah Rushing is yet as a defensive player. I don't know how much better Mateo Uyunglele could be. The defensive line, though, is going to be nasty. That was the other thing that stood out. Watching those guys, that unit is, I've given them the highest grade of any group on the team going into the year. I stand by that. Absolutely stand by that. So let's wrap with some Oregon trivia today, as always. I did pretty darn well. I mean, I won't say the 49ers having drafted the most Ducks ever is my best poll, but this is up there. So I had two questions from Friday's show. How many Ducks have been drafted in the first round in the NFL? How many in the top 5? How many number 1 overall picks? I said 1, 7, and 35, and the actual retail price 1, 8, and 25. Pretty solid stuff. Then I was asked about the longest tenured Ducks on the team. Bryce Betcher is correct. There were 2 correct answers for the other for the other player who's been with the Ducks the longest. Kilo Hana is his first name. Kilo Hana Hassenritter is one. Luke Basso is another long snapper. So that was a good one. That was a great question. That was one of my better responses. All right. Let's wrap with this one. Hey, Spencer, here's 2 trivia questions for you. Since 2000, the Ducks have had a player drafted in the NFL every year except one. What was the year they did not have a single player drafted? Out of the other 24 drafts, 3 of those years, the Ducks only had one single player drafted. What are the 3 years the Ducks only had one single player drafted? Bonus, if you can name the 3 players drafted. Oh, the year they didn't have a single player drafted? That 2016 team that went 4-8 was pretty bad. I don't know who would have been drafted off of that the next year. Those early 2000s teams, I feel like they were too competitive to not have had a single guy. So the 2016 season, so I'll say the 2017 NFL draft. Yeah, 2017 NFL draft. 3 of those years, the Ducks only had one single player drafted. What are the 3 years the Ducks only had a single player drafted? Psh, yikes. I'll keep the thread of that era. I'll say 2017 team to 20. I'll say the 2018 NFL draft. I'll throw in a 2000 and I think Harrington was drafted in 03. So I'll say 2004. I'll say 2000 and... Who would have been drafted in 08? Maybe Stewart around that time? Or was he drafted 07? Yeah, I'll say 2018, 2004. Say 2000. I'll say the 2008 NFL draft. Yeah. I don't feel as good about that. 2017 though, the year they didn't have anyone drafted, I feel okay about that guess. So, all your questions that you want answered, I'm going to get into stat predictions for Oregon superlatives for who's going to lead them in category X, Y, and Z this week on the show. But if there's anything else you want, let me know in the comments below. Hit me up on Twitter, all that good stuff. Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time. Until then, hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day, and go Ducks.